Good morning, everybody. My name is Jose Luis Aguirre. I work for the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office CARON program. It stands for Community Alliance to Revitalize Our Neighborhoods. But before we start, I just want to introduce the new captain here in the coast, Captain Saul Lopez. And also I have Sergeant Victor Lopez, who is the director of the CARON program. I have Adriana Fernandez, who works in conjunction with PCRC and CARON. She is going to help us facilitate a little bit the dialogue. And here is also Isela Martinez. She is an outreach worker, especially for the coast side. Perfect. So before we start, I will ask Adriana if we can just have some agreements before we start the conversation. And before I start, I will say I am an immigrant from Colombia. I'm a journalist. I'm a photographer. I hate guns, firearms, and I work for the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. So when you think about that, it's like, wow, it doesn't make sense. I'm a journalist. I don't like arms. But still, I work for law enforcement agency. So I am a civilian, but I'm going to tell you how I got involved in this field with the CARON program. And I am going to start my story with the first day in the United States. Not the first day, the first hour in the United States. So I came with my student visa, and my papers, my documents, everything was in order. So I was very excited to come over. My girlfriend at that time, went to somebody else to pick me up at the airport. So I was sitting next to the driver, to that person, and I was amazed about everything. Like, wow, look at the cars, look at the freeways, look at the streets, look at the houses. And suddenly we start hearing like sirens, police sirens. And the driver start yelling, "Oh my God, the police, the police, the police," and just hitting the steering wheel. And I was like, wow, I don't know what's happening here. My wife, she was sitting in the back. She was going to look back, and this guy was like, "Don't look at the police, don't look, don't turn around." And I was like petrified, like, what's going on, what happened? We didn't do anything. So this person just stopped a little bit, and the officer just continue driving. So he put the sirens because he has an emergency, but it's not because he was chasing us. But in my mind, it was like, oh my God, now we are in trouble. What we did, or I'm coming from Colombia, where the police is like, you don't trust the police much, and there are a lot of corruption. So the relationship is not so good. You don't follow orders. When they say something, you are just, yeah, right, or you just put a bill and say, you know what, let's leave this like this. But here, that first impression was very intimidating for me. I was petrified, like, oh my God. Can you imagine myself with my documents, with my papers, with everything, but at the same time, I was so afraid for no reason. So that was the first encounter, first hour in the United States, and that's my image of the police in this country. Like, wow, very intimidating, with no reason. I didn't have anything to do, but I was very afraid. Couple of days later, my wife, of course, we lost our status, so we stay as undocumented. My wife was taking English classes at one of the adult schools. So she was walking to the school, and one police officer, he was in his motorcycle, and suddenly he stopped and started looking at my wife and started calling her. And my wife was like, oh my God, how he knew that I am undocumented? He's going to deport me. What we are going to do? So she was almost crying and very afraid. She was like, no, you know what, I'm going to run. But why? Why are you running? And then she was thinking, well, if I run, of course, he's going to chase me, and he's thinking that I am doing something bad. But it happens that this police officer was stopping the traffic and asking her to cross the street. So she just focused on the police officer and why he's calling me is not right. But she didn't see the whole picture. She was just saw the officer calling her, and she was very afraid, very intimidating. So that was another encounter that we were like, oh my God, this is very intimidating. A couple of years after, I got a job in Telemundo. So I was the one writing the news and editing the videos. And what happened, when we got so many videos and news related with police encounters, guess what? When you are in media, you just need to pick like what is more impactful, right? And it's more like dramatic, because you are doing the headlines, you are doing news. I don't want to put, oh my God, look at this nice police officer helping this old lady. That's not news, that doesn't sell. So I was just looking for something really, really strong to show. And when you are editing a video, you just pick the most impactful part of that video. But what happened, you don't have any context about that. You don't know exactly what happened. You just get a portion of that. And when we get the press release or all the communications, it's the same. We don't get the whole picture. The whole picture only knows the police officer that is involved and the person who is involved. They are the ones who really know the story and what's happening. Nobody else, because you can just see something, but you don't know exactly what happened before or the context. And when you are writing news, I have to write the stories in 30 seconds. What can you say in 30 seconds? Not much, right? So you just pick the portion that is more impactful, that is meaningful, that is strong, so you can sell the news, you can put the headlines, you can create a really, really nice story. But you don't know exactly what's happening before that or the context. That's another way to do it. Then I did my master's in fine arts with emphasis in photography. So I become a professional photographer, and when I was doing my thesis project, I wanted to include a police officer in my thesis project. My thesis project was about Latinos in the United States, but I want to show them like professional and in different positions, different jobs. I didn't want to show like the what everybody thinks about immigrants, like, oh, they are in the kitchens or they are in the field. I just want to show like the professionals, so we have a different perspective. So for my thesis, I wanted to have somebody in uniform. I say, you know what, they are a very important part of our community. I just want to see a Latino in this position. So my wife met one deputy from the sheriff's office and asked her if I can photograph her for this project. So I went, I took the photo, and I gave the photo to her a couple of days after, and she was very excited and very happy with this photo. So she shared the photo with the sheriff, the undersheriff, the executive team, and they say, wow, this is good. Probably he can help us to do more photography for the office. He can create some nice images, so that's good. So guess what? Thanks to that photo, she offered me a position in the program that I am working right now. And I was like, wow, this is very, very excited, Thanks to one photo, I never thought about that, and I got the position at the Caron program. Without knowing anything, I wasn't related with law enforcement before. As I said at the beginning, I was the one behind the desk writing news, and I was in the other side. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to work with law enforcement if I don't know anything about that? I hate guns, I hate firearms. No way. But then when I realized and I found what the program does, my program, I was like, wow, this is great. I was still working for some newspapers. As a matter of fact, I was like, no, you know what, this is a great news. It's a positive news because this program, the Caron program, works with the community. Our goal is to build trust between communities, specifically immigrant communities, and the sheriff's office. And how we do that is through education. So we go to different communities, offer different workshops, parenting classes, community academies, and basically anything that they need, we provide those services to them. And we participate in different fairs, festivals, kermesse, any activity that involves community, we go there. So to me, it's like, wow, this is something that I never heard about before. And I think it's very interesting because that's what we need. We just need to to be united, and we need to work together. Otherwise, we are not doing anything. So anyways, that's part of my story, how I got involved in this program. And I was like, at the beginning, like, I can't believe that I am working for a law enforcement agency when I was in the other side of the spectrum, and suddenly here I am also sharing that story. But imagine if that happened to me, that I came with my visa, with my papers, with everything. Imagine what happened with so many immigrants they don't have legal status, and what's the idea they have of law enforcement. It's like, it's very intimidating. And the thing is, when we immigrate from our countries, we don't know anything about the laws, we don't know anything about the rules, we don't know the culture, we don't know anything about anything. So the majority of people think, wow, the police, they are ICE, and they are going to deport me. So that's very, very scary, because that's why people don't trust the police, and that's part of our job with the immigrant communities, educating them that we are not immigration, that we just want to provide services, we want them to report crimes, just to make the neighborhood safer. So, but that takes a long process. So that's an interesting job. I really love what I do because we are just building community. So before we continue, I just want to play a short video. It shows a little bit what the current program does, so you get a better idea of the work that we do with the communities.
Hi, so my name is Victor Lopez. I am the current director of the CARON program. I see that we didn't update it because we don't only work in North Fair Oaks, we also work a lot here on the coast. I think this video was tailored for an event that we were doing in North Fair Oaks, so I apologize for that. We do a lot here on the coast, and Captain Lopez here makes sure that we do a lot and participate in the community. My background is I come from an immigrant family. I grew up in the North Fair Oaks area, Redwood City, if you guys aren't familiar with that area. I went to Hoover School, and then I graduated from Sequoia High School. I started working with the probation department. I started working with youth, and working in the probation department, I started to realize that the probation department is very reactive. Once kids get into the system, it's very hard for them to get out. And the opportunity came about for me to go over to the sheriff's office, and I love working with youth. I thought that I could be more reactive in that position. They sold that to me. So I went and I moved over to the sheriff's office, and it was the best decision I ever made. What they sold to me actually is true. We're very lucky, and I'm only speaking for San Mateo County, the sheriff's office, because I know that other agencies don't have programs like this. CARON is a model program, and we're hoping one day it goes nationwide, because we do so much. Our sheriffs in the past and our current sheriff truly believe in community building. And right now, more than ever, we have a very tough job to build that trust with everything that's going on. So, we do everything that we can to try to let the community know that we are public servants, we are here to serve you. And with this program, I know that there's a lot of fear within the immigrant community. I have family members that are immigrants, and they come to me all the time with all these rumors and innuendos, and I have to sit there and tell them, no, a lot of them aren't true. I can only speak for what's happening in San Mateo County. I can't speak for what's happening in other counties, but here in San Mateo County, no. I do a lot to tell them that a lot of stuff that they see on the news or hear, is not actually happening. Like Jose Luis said, as a journalist, I understand they put the hottest thing in there. They don't tell the whole story. That's one battle that we always have to face. But we are here for you. We're here for the public. We're here for the community. And we can't do our jobs without you guys, without the community. I mean, we can't do it at 100%, right? We need you. There's not enough of us out there. You guys are our eyes and ears, and our concerns are the safety of the community. And we want them to be able to report crimes, not to be afraid of us. My biggest pet peeve, because my parents used to do it to me, was when I was a little kid, and they'd see a police officer, someone in uniform, they go, look, if you don't behave yourself, I'm gonna tell on you. What does that build? A very negative attitude from the start, right? So to this day, I see parents, especially Latino parents, do that all the time. And I go up to them and I say, no, please don't do that, you know? In a playful way, and I give them a sticker and stuff, because it just starts, if that child is in danger or lost, we don't want them to be afraid of approaching someone in uniform, right? We want them to go straight to us and say, hey, there's something wrong. And if they continue to do that, they're gonna be afraid, and we don't want that, or at least I don't want that. So that's one of my biggest pet peeves. Anyway, I did patrol. I patrolled out here many years ago. I've been a detective. I worked for a transit unit, which deals with all the mass transportation, Caltrain and Samtrans. And I was fortunate enough the last 3 years to be here in Caron. And someone once told me that once you lose that compassion for the community, it's time for you to find a new job, right? Because that's what we're about. We're about compassion and helping the community. So I love my job right now, and I have a great team. Jose Luis has been in Caron for I think 7 years, and he's the heart and soul of the program. Without him, I find it very difficult to do my job. And I always get the civilian perspective when we do things. I have one quick story. Now, I'm not going to name the organization, but it was here on the coast. When I first got the job, I went because I wanted to start meeting people and organizations and starting to offer our services and tell them what we were about. So I went to this person, the director, and the director didn't want to have anything to do with us. In fact, the words were, "We see enough of you guys, we don't want you here." And I was like totally shocked. I was like, holy moly, what's going on here? Those weren't the exact words I used other words, but, and I was talking to Jose Luis about it, and Jose Luis was a little shocked. And I said, well, I'm not gonna give up, anytime there's an event, we're gonna show up, and we're gonna do our thing. And we started doing that. Every time they had an event, we showed up. And eventually, I won't get to all the whole thing, but now that director is part of our board. And, we have a wonderful relationship. And in fact, sometimes they ask us to do too much, and it's like, oh my God, we're overwhelmed, because we have the whole county to deal with. But that's just the story. I mean, once people get to know the program, like any officer, once they get to know them, they'll have a better understanding. That's why I tell everybody, when you see an officer, regardless of where, go up and approach them, say hi. I don't know, I know that sometimes we come off intimidated, but we're fathers, mothers, grandparents, we're human beings, and like in any other profession, there's some good, there's a lot of good, and there's some bad officers, but that's not all of us. That's a very, 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 less than 1% of them, like in any other profession. There's over 900,000 officers in the United States, and we get a bad rap because one officer does something they're not supposed to be doing. Or the whole story is not given on the news, So anyway, I probably started rambling on. I'm going to introduce the new, I don't know if you guys all know that there's a new captain or chief of Half Moon Bay or on the coast side, who replaced Captain Muncie, and it's Saul Lopez, so I'm going to come up.
I'll try not to violate the group guidelines that Adriana told us about, like Victor, but it's an honor to be here with all of you. Again, Saul Lopez, I'm the new captain here on the coast, also the chief of police for the city of Half Moon Bay. I understand that everybody's either a service provider or work for some type of county entity that provides to the community, is that correct? Okay, so when they first told me about it, I was really excited. They said, hey, we're going to go talk to farm workers. I was excited because, initially, because I thought here are our farms and whatnot. I'm like, it's exciting because my parents, when they immigrated here from Mexico, they were farm workers. They worked in nurseries up in Petaluma. And coincidentally, an Italian family took them in and kind of introduced them to the new world to them back in the late 1950s. So I was really excited about it, and I'm excited here to talk to all of you because I think it's really important to communicate with each other. The one special thing that San Mateo County has is that all the stakeholders come together and they talk. If you go to any other county, they really don't understand the San Mateo County way, and that even goes for law enforcement. Just the simplest thing like a radio, I can communicate with any officer in the entire county, it doesn't matter what office they work for, or what agency. So, to me, a big priority is communication. Prior to assuming this role, I was a commander of the San Mateo County Narcotics Task Force. And as you can probably, if you don't know about it, it's the highest liability unit. It's very in-depth investigations, anywhere from quality of life cases in neighborhoods to cartel investigations. So in that role, I have to communicate with every single police chief. And with that, you learned a lot of diplomacy in the county. You learned a lot of the politics in the county because everybody has different priorities. And obviously, the priorities of the sheriff's office are to build trust, transparency, and they're not just cliche phrases. We really do believe that. I believe it. Good example, Lieutenant Corpus, or she's a captain now, as I am. Victor, everybody in Caron, they're doing a great job, Jose Luis. We were really integrating ourselves into all the communities, focusing on the immigrant communities, because I think those communities have the worst perception about law enforcement and people in uniform in general. Occasionally we get phone calls where there's SPCA, they wear uniforms. They show up, they think it's immigration. So we have to really, suppress that situation because people start texting and social media really impacts even those communities because their kids are talking. I'm gonna give a really brief story about my first interaction with law enforcement, and I don't wanna take too much time, but so my grandparents lived in Colma. It was somewhat of a property like this. It was about an acre, sat behind the cemetery. Coincidentally, my father worked at the cemetery for about 40 years. And we'd go to the grandparents' house almost every day. I kind of grew up in the cemetery, believe it or not. It's kind of morbid feeling, but big property. But my grandfather stuck to his roots in Mexico, and he actually had farm animals on the property. So we grew up with pigs, cows, chickens, similar to this in Pullman. And I remember going up to Sonoma County where we have a lot of family, and my dad said, hey, we're gonna go buy a baby cat. Let's go pick it up in the van and we're gonna bring it down. And I was probably 7, 8 years old. As we're returning, we show up to the house because that's where the corral and everything's set up just like a Mexican ranch. We show up and there's a bunch of people in uniform in front of the house with people detained, including my grandfather. And lo and behold, it was SPCA, Fish and Game, and you can't have livestock within the city limits without permits, unbeknownst to my grandfather. So that was my first kind of traumatic experience with law enforcement, and that's where I started kind of fearing law enforcement. And then, of course, like Victor says, every Mexican or Latino parent says, I'm going to call the police, start behaving. So anyhow, I had this stigma, this bad perception about law enforcement growing up. I would say that I grew up with the wrong crowd until a high school counselor took a chance on me and really showed me the opportunities and introduced me to a friend of his that was a sergeant for the city of San Bruno. This gentleman, who I still affectionately call Uncle Bob, he's in his mid-70s, been retired about 15 years, was a Scottish man, grew up in Guatemala. Parents were missionaries there, bilingual in Spanish, right? He just showed me that there was good about doing police work, and there was a lot of opportunity if you put your heart to it. So again, if you would ask me, 9th grade, do I want to be a cop? I'd probably give you a couple of, some sign language, and it wouldn't be all the fingers either. So, and again, joking aside, I talked to a big group of kids at Cunha Middle School yesterday, about 300 of them. We had a youth summit, and that stemmed from a lot of gang activity here on the coast. And luckily, with the partnership of all the schools and the city, we suppressed that. So I told them that story. I said, lean on the mentors that you're going to meet in high school. Lean on the adults that really want to interact. And I think that's what all of you do. You really want to show that different side of who you are. Some kids are going to be involved in CPS situations, as we all know, or other social services that really impact them. and it may be in a negative way, even though you're doing the best for their family and their situation. So, again, my expectation of my personnel and all the involvement of the stakeholders is that we have to communicate to get ahead, right? So communicate, collaborate, and really execute that mission that we all have. Not just kind of, not the agendas that we personally have, but actually collectively. So I think this is great. I don't have business cards, but I will provide, if you provide them to me, I will send you an email with my information or share it. If there's anything on the coast that I can do for you, or my personnel can, please let me know. We work with Puente out here, we work with Alas. Currently, I'm working with the city of Half Moon Bay in doing homeless outreach for the homeless population. And, you know, Coastside Hope, I don't know if there's anybody from there here today. But, you know, there's a lot of activity going on here on the coast, and I really appreciate Miramar Farms for hosting this event, because I had never been out here in this property, even though I was a sergeant out here a couple of years. But anyhow, I just want to tell you thank you for all you do. And again, hopefully this encounter with us, or you at least know some faces and some names, and you can reach out for some community events that you may want to sponsor. I'm really big on non-enforcement activities. That's kind of a term that I use in order to really reach out to not only the immigrant communities, but the population that doesn't know that they have access to all the services that this county provides. That's something that I've learned as I've grown in this career. You know, as a patrol deputy and as a sergeant, you really don't get to know all the services that this county has to offer. Luckily, we're very well funded, and you know, the Board of Supervisors and everyone on down, they just really care about everybody that lives here. So I just want to touch a little bit about the immigration policy that we have. Unless somebody has a question on that, I'm going to kind of share you know, the stance of the sheriff. We don't participate, and I hope you convey this to the people, your clients that you deal with. We don't participate in raids with ICE. We don't work with ICE on any kind of immigration enforcement situation. The only interaction that we may ever have with ICE is within our jails when people are going through that legal process. And there's legal notification that's actually authorized by the state of, by the governor's office. And it's SB 54, obviously. There's a lot of language behind that. So I just want to reaffirm what Victor and Jose Luis have said. Again, we're here to help the community. Yes, we do have to enforce laws to keep public safety intact, and that's for all of you that live in the county as well, but quite honestly, we're here to serve the public. And that's why I took the oath of office back in 1997. So with that, does anybody have any questions of me? All right, very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.